Welcome to False Flag. Today we're talking about corporations. A lot of people may not know a lot of things. There's a great movie that came out 2011 that called The Corporation. We will have links to this episode, so at the end you'll be able to click and view different articles and things. But all right, so you watched the movie The Corporation. Right. And what did you say? I thought it was very good.
That's right. I thought it was
well, you told me it. You didn't learn anything new.
Well, you have to understand that I'm an old conspiracy guy from way back, and I used to spend Saturdays at the library.
There.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I used to spend Saturdays at the library digging into all these things and obscure material. And so I've got about 40 years of digging into this stuff. And I wouldn't recommend that because The Corporation is a great movie to get it all in an hour and a half.
Oh, sure. One thing that I pulled out from it that I really liked was 150 years ago, corporations were insignificant.
In this country. They played a very significant part in founding this country, but after the Revolutionary War, and I have to say, I really admire our founding fathers because those guys knew what they were doing, in my opinion, and they knew dangers of powerful.
Will Robinson.
They knew the danger of powerful corporations because there's nothing new. It wasn't new back then.
Oh, hell no.
Large corporations were nothing new even back then.
Well,
sure.
One thing that I liked in the quote of the movie is they said that corporation is considered a person, a living person, and a corporation is something that it doesn't have a soul to damn or arms to arrest.
Right, you can't arrest corporations. But anyway, the founding fathers knew of the dangers of corporations having too much influence in government. It's happened every time, and so they tried to limit that. And the way they did it, and I think it brings it out in the movie. I'm not sure about the detail, but there were certain conditions to get a corporate charter in this country, and one of them was a term limit. There was an expiration date for any corporation, and another one was public service or the public good. Was this corporation needed?
Well, the corporation had to provide a service to the people.
Right.
Now, the thing I liked about it, too, was who was in charge of issuing the certificate of corporation was not the federal government, but the
states.
States.
That's true today. Different states are still in charge of issuing corporate charters and controlling the operation of corporations. That's still true today.
Yeah, that's why
states are in charge.
Incorporate yourself in like Montana or something like that. That's
Yeah,
the cheapest way.
Delaware is
Delaware.
Delaware because they have like less strict rules and things in Delaware. But yeah, that movie. So back in the Revolution, right after the Revolutionary Wars, when our founding fathers were controlling everything, setting everything up, they knew about the dangers of corporations having too much influence in government. They knew all about that. That was nothing new to them. And they tried to do that, and it got away from them slowly but surely over time. We got away from those principles, and the Civil War was a major turning point.
Sure, that was also when the industrial age was just beginning.
Right.
And so it was after the Civil War and the industrial age started where the corporate lawyers knew they needed more power and constraints. This morning I watched a great movie that we'll get into another podcast, but there was a part in it by Noam Chomsky that forgot to silence my damn phone. So, but the Noam Chomsky movie that just came out is Requiem for the American Dream. And like I said, we'll get into that in another podcast. But something he said in there was that we saw with the bank bailout, that the corporations began to fund legislation that would regulate their businesses. And the government then put the business leaders in as the regulators. So they were self-regulating, which is what happened with the Wall Street bank flop.
Right.
You know.
So here we are.
Yeah. But
and
prior to that, this wasn't an issue.
Right. The founding fathers knew the dangers of corporations, and they tried to protect us against them. And we, the public, just let it go over the years. Just incrementally, one little bit at a time, the corporate lawyers got in there, changed laws, and now we have what we have. But we used to be protected. When this country started, we were protected from this.
And what runs the government today?
Corporations, yeah.
And that's part of the problem that we have as we're talking about all the different subject matters we've already covered in our podcast. You know, it's the corporations that is causing the problem. You know, wage inequality and all that. Civil rights in 30 years ago, the blacks were stripped of their rights. That's not correct. The civil rights that took place in the 1960s with President Johnson signing gave a little bit more rights, but it was also at that time that we got into Milton Friedman and his economic plan that changed to where we are today, the problems that we have. But if we go back into history, let's understand corporations first of all. Corporations were first for the good of the people, and the local people dictated what natural resources could be used, how much. The people had more of a say in it.
Only in this country, though, not worldwide.
Yeah.
Only in this country.
Right.
Yeah.
And how far that we have come, because, I mean, even with me trying to work with a capitalist company, I quickly found out just how unhappy I was because I had no rights. Most people feel like there's a slave to their own job that they work, versus when corporations
We're limited, more limited.
were more limited.
Yeah. Well,
So how can we reel this back in? How can we change that?
your state legislature they control the charters. They can revoke a charter. They can revoke the charter for GE or General Motors or Walmart.
But as we've recently seen in our state, the big oil companies came in and did not want the gross production tax raised. And they convinced the legislature not to vote for it. And the way that they did it was, you looked at how much money they had gave to the politicians to get elected. We've got to limit. Citizens United has got to be overturned, because Citizens United gave businesses just
A blank check.
a blank check.
Well, we live in an Orwellian world, so if it says Clean Air Act, it's not Clean Air Act. If it says Citizens United, it's not citizens.
Yeah.
And you're talking about how the legislature's bought and paid for. Look at, by the vote of the people, we had a thing where we raised the amount for a felony in a charge. Passed overwhelmingly. They've already introduced legislation, as far as I know, they passed it, to basically just say, well, we're going to do it anyway.
They did that on several of our referendums, not just the one. I think they're trying to overturn 2 or 3 of them.
One thing the movie brought out that I thought was interesting is the profit motivation. All corporations nowadays is they need more money. The bottom line is ahead of the public well-being.
Oh no, I've got a business degree. I can speak on this. A corporation, specifically the shareholders, it's in the charter that the CEO has the fiduciary responsibility to make money for this corporation.
It's against the law not to.
It's against the law for them not to.
Yeah.
And the public good has nothing to do with it. It's all about making.
They're just following the law.
The externality cost has got to be minimalized, so they cut out anything that doesn't work in their best favor.
Right. But yeah, it's like it's against law not to do that.
Well,
so you want to change corporations, you got to change the law. There you go back to your state legislature. They control the charters. They have absolute control.
Well, let's go back to the past versus the present day. Because when you look at the industrial age in America and how things changed after, all the unions and the fights, and the unions broke down to where they had more say over things, they had better money in different things, to where it is today, the externality costs to be minimalized. What does that mean? Well, when unions were really going strong in America, by the 60s and 70s, we began to see American businesses going overseas because it was more cost effective for them to pay little wages. And in fact, there's a video in the corporation, the movie that I thought was interesting, is where the CEO of Zenith said, why is it easier for us to go to Taiwan? Well, when we go to Taiwan, it doesn't cost me $59 per TV set for it to be made. Mm-hmm. But the quality's less. I mean, don't we all say today that the products that we buy have less years of service than what they used to be? Cars,
everything's throwaway now. Back 30, 40 years ago, before this all was a terrible problem, you could have an appliance or something repaired. Heck, you could repair a toaster. Now you don't even repair a TV or a washing machine.
Appliance repair people.
Yeah.
That was an industry.
Yeah.
Okay.
But why was it working then? Why in the 1940s and 50s was everything money-wise? You had an affluent middle class.
Okay, this is a bigger picture issue here. Okay. When you bought a refrigerator in 1950, which I have several of these things, they still work.
Yeah.
They're going strong today. I've got a 2012 fridge that I buy parts for once a month. I got a 2008 or 9 washer and dryer from Samsung, by the way. Nice, really nice. Every 6 months I got to buy a $100 part for it.
I think you might be into planned obsolescence.
Planned obsolescence, okay.
Which is different from corporations, kind of.
But this is the deal. It was a totally different mentality.
Yeah.
When you bought a refrigerator back then, your real wages, it cost more to buy it than it does today. But the businesses that built these things, it was built to last. It really was. I mean, and you go back even in like the turn of the century, you look at old Sears catalogs, they will be advertising a furnace that will be passed down through generations.
I think that's free enterprise at work.
Okay.
Competition.
Okay.
You want to get the best thing you can get.
Yeah, they want to do the best thing.
Yeah.
But see, what they're doing now is
absence of free enterprise.
The refrigerator we buy now costs less in real money than it did in 1950. But we don't expect it to last. Like we buy, when a toaster breaks today, we chunk it and we still warm for $10. You buy another one. Where, say, in 1950 equivalent, you would have paid $20 or $30 for it, and you kept it for 20, 30 years.
Okay, but you said something about going to Walmart. When we do that, when we go into Walmart,
well, we're doing the same thing the corporation does with labor.
Okay, we are a part of the science of exploitation, because for products that they sell that are so cheap, there's someone on the other end that is not getting paid well in a third world country.
I'm taking one step farther. Since your real wages have been in declining every single year since 1970 something. What that means is our ability to purchase with the same amount of money each year goes down. If Walmart and stuff like that hadn't have came in and gave us access to these mega cheap stuff, like $10 for like a dozen pair of socks, then we would have got the pitchforks out and burned Washington down by now. But we're in this thing of we buy a whole lot more cheaper stuff, and we don't realize that we're not buying quality anymore, and we don't have the ability to buy quality anymore.
Well, yeah, we can. We can if we allow unions to come back into place. The mentality of Americans have got to get back into, yes, we need a union. Part of the reason corporations changed was they got involved with union busting. And it goes back into the corporations and their lawyers changing legislation that granted more freedoms, unregulated freedoms to corporations and took away the rights of the workers.
What was the air conditioner place that...
Train?
Westinghouse?
I think it was Train.
Okay, well, we'll call it Train. When you're paying your average worker $25 an hour here, and you can get essentially the same job done across the board for $3.50 an hour, that's hard to pass up. And again, if you're a CEO, you have to do that.
Well,
it's not a moral thing. By the very charter, you have to
try to.
Well, change the charter.
Well,
why are we giving CEOs that power? Why as we as Americans? Well, okay, but somewhere down the road.
Well, see, we used to have tariffs. I mean,
okay,
they can always do this, but if you build something in Mexico, we'd have a tariff coming across the border.
And General Trump has mentioned that during his campaign. I think he changed his mind actually.
But what I'm saying is,
he actually changed his mind when he got.
Okay, you all make it sound like that's just the way it is. At some point, the American public gave up their rights.
Here's a problem that isn't addressed very much, and the executives of the corporation are required to do whatever they can to maximize profits, and that would include going offshore for the cheap labor costs. However, that's a short-term solution, not a long-term solution, and a few of the executive officers are starting to figure that out now. And Henry Ford got this right away back 100 years ago. People hated him up in Dearborn when he made his, started making cars up there, because he was paying his factory workers twice what the going wage was for trade work, and his peers, capitalists, didn't like it very much, and he knew that, well, these guys are going to be the market. If I pay my workers enough to buy my stuff, then I'm just creating my own market.
If we keep lowering our own wages,
exactly. That same principle works in reverse. And 30 years ago, when they started offshore and everything, they didn't take that into account. That's the long-term view. If you cut, if the middle class in this country starts shrinking because all their jobs are going overseas, they're not creating the same number of middle class people consumers over there, because
corporations do not consider the cost. And when I say consider the cost, they're not even equipped to even worry about the toxic waste, the pollution, or what
they don't have to be.
They're
not required to. They're not required to pay the bill for that.
But let's go back to what we're talking about.
That's what I was trying to say before about the middle class shrinking. The middle class has noticed it because you have all these old
the cheap crap. You got the cheap crap, and they can still afford to have TVs and refrigerators and all that.
Something as good as it was that your grandparents built, as far as how long it's going to last.
Right.
But you don't notice it.
I think in this country we're starting to notice that, and even the corporations are starting to notice that. It's nice to be able to build this stuff with a low labor cost, but those people that provide the low labor costs do not provide the market for the consumption.
Most of them can't afford it.
Right. And so in the long term, this globalization business may not be working out for them. It might be working out for the next 5 or 10 years, but sooner or later they're going to lose their market.
Well, in fact, Nike. Well, look at the movie, because in the movie it talks about the corporation Nike.
Thank you for tuning into False Flag, the grassroots activism podcast where together we can change the world. Please like, comment, and subscribe.